And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on this Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what you find in this YouTube video, you can go to weather.gov. It'll bring you to a map of the continental U.S. and you point and click anywhere on this map or the map here of Hawaii and Alaska to the lower left. It will give you a forecast for that particular pinpoint location along with any relevant watches, warnings, or advisories. On this Wednesday afternoon, looking at the lower 48, we have severe thunderstorm watches covering much of southern Oklahoma down into northern and western Texas. There have been some reports of damaging winds, a potential for tornadoes and flash flooding. This is a very moist air mass bumping up into a frontal system. On top of that, today, temperatures were around 90 degrees in Chicago, up even into southern Michigan around Grand Rapids, Detroit. Very unusual warmth for this point in October. Here in Alaska, though, we are watching a strong frontal system that'll be working its way northeastward up along the Gulf Coast later tonight and tomorrow. It'll have gale with even some storm force winds along areas of the Gulf Coast. And also on the backside of a low pressure, this front is attached to a low pressure that's going to sit and spin over the lower portion of the Alaska Peninsula. On the north side of that low, there are going to be some strong winds and high surf along the lower Yukon Delta, St. Lawrence Island tomorrow. Winds could gust as high as 45 to 60 miles an hour out of the northeast, resulting in high surf. And then a bout of heavy precipitation with that front that's going to work its way up into the Gulf will be pointed at the northeastern Gulf Coast into the northern Panhandle, especially around Yakutat in the icy Strait corridor there. More accumulating snows will spread across parts of the central interior and Alaska range as a result of that Gulf moisture lifting farther north into the colder air now that resides across the mainland. Taking a look at the southwest coast there, lower Yukon Delta, when we look at Imanak, increasing clouds and wind will be developing there. Temperature early this afternoon, only 39 degrees, and you can see the high clouds advancing with the low pressure still very far south of there, south of the eastern Aleutians and the southern part there of the Alaska Peninsula. At Karluk there on the southwest side of Kodiak Island, clouds are also on the increase, as will winds be building. There is a storm warning for Shelikof Strait, which will see at least northeasterly winds to 50 knots later tonight and early on Thursday. Temperature there early this afternoon near 50. So here are the areas of concern. We have the storm warnings for the Barren Islands, the entrance there to Cook Inlet, and then through Shelikof Strait for tonight and into Thursday. And then back here, we expect strong winds to develop, especially on Thursday. Northeasterly winds along the lower Yukon coast and St. Lawrence Island could result in high surf. We're anticipating winds gusting as high as 45 to 60 miles an hour there. And then we're going to have a focus of moisture pointed right up here in the northeastern Gulf coast at Yakutat, and then it's going to push southeastward into the northern central parts of the Panhandle. 2 to 4 inches of rain could fall with this particular front. And then as that moisture is drawn further northward into the colder air that resides along the Alaska range and through the central eastern interior, will result in another round of accumulating snow. So here is the liquid precipitation forecast on Thursday, and notice around Yakutat down toward the icy Strait corridor through here. That's where some of the heaviest precipitation will be focused. Whenever you get southwest flow aloft running up into the coastal mountains, you're going to get a lot of orographic enhancement, or what we call orographic lift, to enhance the rainfall. And by the time we get into Friday, some moderate rains will still occur over the lower portion of the Panhandle, but not as focused as what they were on Thursday. And as that moisture lifts further north, we do expect some accumulating snows, Fairbanks and Nenana down toward 40-mile Gold Country and along areas of the Alaska Range. Parts of the eastern Alaska Range, like Isabel Pass, Mentasta Pass, could pick up several inches of snow in that same time frame. I've been talking about last couple of weeks, we likely reached minimum sea ice back in just before the equinox here in September, and that's been confirmed. The National Sea Ice Data Center believes, based on their analysis of the ice data, that occurred, the minimum sea ice occurred September 19th. It was the 7th lowest minimum coverage of ice that's been observed. And a disturbing trend continues. The last 17 years of the annual minimum extents are the 17 lowest of the 45-year satellite record that they use to look and analyze ice data from. So it continues to show that climate change is really affecting the Arctic region, with a lot of melting of ice up there in the Arctic area. Looking at the satellite imagery, we have a couple different systems going on here. We have one low back toward the west-southwest Bering Sea. The stronger low is coming up here now out of the North Pacific, and it's going to pull over areas of the end of the Alaska Peninsula around Sand Point. And with that being the case, we have a surge of moisture, atmospheric river lifting northeastward, pointing toward Yakutat, the northeastern Gulf Coast. Very common when you have a low take a track out toward this region. Stronger winds along that front. Areas of the interior have seen some clearing, but again, this moisture will eventually make its way north to the Alaska Range later tomorrow night, and then even up toward Fairbanks as we get into early Friday. So here's the front right now, low pressure system down around 985 millibars, with a warm front extending out now, beginning to push up into the Gulf. We have a lot of clear skies, Anchorage northward. You can see the high cloudiness, the shield of high clouds in advance of this warm front beginning now to show up for those of you along the Gulf Coast. And then back to the west, there's another low here out in the southwest Bering. As we go into late tonight, early on Thursday morning, the low down near 980 millibars will be still just south there of Sand Point, with the front occluding and the warm front lifting northeastward up into the Gulf. This is where the main push of moisture will be focused, right here around Yakutat and into the northern part of the Panhandle. Some of the moisture as we go into later morning will start to spread up to areas like the Copper River Basin. And if we take a look at winds, look at these winds. There's going to be gale force, even some storm force winds late tonight, early tomorrow in the area around the Barren Islands, entrance of Cook Inlet, Shelikof Strait. Winds pretty strong to just out over the southeastern corner of the Bering. But by the time we get into Thursday afternoon, I'll show you some stronger winds up developing here off the southwest coast, off the lower Yukon coast. So the low will be down around 982 millibars, sitting there just on the south end of the Alaska Peninsula. Secondary weaker low will kind of be taking shape here in the northwestern Gulf, which is fairly common when we have a long front like that working its way up through the Gulf. And some gale force winds along areas of this front, along with some moderate to heavy precipitation. Some of the coastal rains will be, as I mentioned, as much as 2 to 4 inches of rain could fall with the system from Yakutat down into at least areas of the northern half of the Panhandle. And then as that moisture pivots further northward, as we get into Thursday night and into Friday, we anticipate that to change to some accumulating snow. So Thursday afternoon, we expect very brisk northeasterly winds, gale force winds with gusts as high as 45 to 60 miles an hour here along the outer coast of the lower Yukon, as well as here up along St. Lawrence Island. That'll result in some high surf. And looking at Friday's map, the front finally lifts further north to near the Alaska Range, so that moisture will be spreading further north up through Fairbanks, 40-mile gold country, so wintry weather, another round of some accumulating snow. Some of the snow, several inches possible in parts of the Alaska Range, especially the eastern Alaska Range. And overall, we're just going to continue to have a pretty solid fall weather pattern where we have the cooler temperatures and, of course, the colder air across the interior and around the mountains will lead to snow. By Thursday afternoon, we find the winds are not quite as strong along the Gulf as what they will be in the morning. Strongest winds to impact the Gulf will be here to the north of Kodiak Island, entrance of Cook Inlet, Shelikof Strait later tonight. Early tomorrow morning could be some storm force winds. Lows Thursday morning are going to generally be mid-upper 40s in the southern Panhandle. We're going to see some 20s here further inland where the cold air resides, Copper River Basin. We're looking at 20 degrees there, Glen Allen. 30s, mid-upper 30s with thickening cloud cover at the Anchorage Bowl. And then temperatures Thursday afternoon will be confined to the 50s, maybe 60 down there toward Clawwalker Craig, but otherwise 40s throughout much of south central. And precipitation in these lower areas will be in the form of rain, but as you start getting up into the mountains, the Talkeetnas, and especially further north, it'll eventually be snow, especially Thursday night and into Friday. Temperatures not quite as chilly Friday morning because there actually is a push of milder air along the immediate Gulf Coast. In fact, lows near 50 there in the southwest. And we could see a 60-degree reading during the day on Friday, especially for the outer and southern parts of the Panhandle, including maybe Ketchikan, Craig, and Heidelberg. But to the west, 50s creeping upwards through the Kenai Peninsula, but there'll be some precipitation falling. Notice the cold here in the far north. Arctic Village 2 below. This morning, Anaktuvik Pass was 2 above for the state's coldest temperature, and we do expect a few temperatures could dip a little below zero here along the Brooks Range, especially south side, northeastern part of the state. Otherwise, temperatures everywhere below freezing. Teens across the Yukon Valley, so definitely a trend toward colder weather. Highs Thursday afternoon will be tough to reach freezing most areas. That may be a little optimistic, 37 there for Fairbanks, unless you get a little downslope. And then as that moisture rides further north Thursday night, we're going to see snow, accumulating snows across this region north of the Alaska Range. And temperatures Friday morning, again in the single digits, a few areas near zero here along the Brooks Range. And temperatures overall, 20s, very common across much of the north. And for Friday afternoon, temperatures stay below freezing. Brooks Range, North Slope, Arctic Coast, but still a bit above freezing. Mid-30s, Seward Peninsula at Nome, as well as extending as you get south of Fairbanks. You'll still see some readings as you head toward Eagle and Northway, in fact, as warm as 42 there at Northway. For the interior of the Southwest, as you go up the Yukon River, temperatures below freezing tonight into Thursday morning. 40s along the Alaska Peninsula, the Aleutians. Still some lower 50s showing up along the areas of the Alaska Peninsula, say, as you get up toward Chiknik and even Sandpoint on over toward Kodiak City. And then for Friday morning, lows will be slightly higher just due to cloud cover, a little below freezing there as you get up along Norton Sound, and temperatures generally in the low mid-40s along the Alaska Peninsula. And then temperatures pretty much central eastern Aleutians, lower Alaska Peninsula, right around 50. Lower 50s, King Salmon and Kodiak City, and back to the west, 40s through the lower Kuskokwim Basin, including Bethel at 45. So here is the extended temperature outlook. Not encouraging if you were looking for a little nice period of dry, mild fall weather. It's going to be colder with the best chance of below normal temperatures situated over the southwestern half of the mainland, including the Alaska Peninsula, and this would be from October 10th through the 14th. Precipitation is expected to average below normal over the southwest. In likelihood because the direction of the winds is not bringing in moisture off the Bering, but rather we're probably going to have some sort of systems down here in the Gulf, so it would be a colder, drier north-northeasterly flow, and then areas along the Alcan border, the northeast mainland, and down in through the Panhandle could see precipitation average a little bit above normal here just prior to mid-month.